I think personally, I think they've separated their professional lives, but I think what's really a great problem for them now, as of in the last few weeks, is that Meghan has got no real income anymore. She's finished. I do think that when you're mocked so publicly as they've been, their value begins to nosedive pretty quickly. And I don't think they're finding any more sources of income.
Tom Bower, the legendary royal author, is sharpening his quill for a new edition of his book set to reveal huge secrets inside Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's marriage.
A quiet detail just shook up the whole conversation around Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's marriage. And it didn't come from a tabloid headline. It came from someone who has built a career digging where others won't. According to royal biographer Tom Bower, there's a specific clause tucked inside Harry and Meghan's prenuptial agreement as page 14, clause 7. And if his claims are accurate, that one section could explain a lot of moves that, until now, seemed random. Bower suggests Harry may have signed the agreement without fully grasping how tightly it was structured. That's a serious claim, and it's important to treat it as exactly that, a claim. But here's where things get interesting. If what Bower hints at is true, it might explain why Meghan brought back Sunshine Sachs in January 2026. It might also add context to financial shifts that reportedly began as early as 2022. And when Bower says Harry could risk losing everything, he's not necessarily talking about emotions. He's talking about contracts, leverage, and legal positioning. Now, before jumping to conclusions, it helps to understand why Bower's words carry weight in certain circles. He isn't known for tossing out wild speculation. Before becoming a full-time author, he worked as a barrister and investigative journalist with the BBC. Over decades, he built a reputation for detailed research and relentless documentation. He famously investigated figures like Robert Maxwell, whose business empire collapsed in scandal. He also scrutinized Mohammed Al-Fayed and examined the corporate world surrounding Simon Cowell.
A man who she abandoned for months to the media, and now presents her mother, Doria, speaking for the first time, telling outright lies about her ex-husband. I mean, this was a calculated attempt against the families.
Well, you know, Piers, you're the first person to say how limited Prince Harry is, unfortunately, and how his wife trades off her husband's fame and fortune, or not so great fortune now. I mean, this is the problem, but we're still interested because, after all, he's a great character in our modern day.
Whether people agreed with his tone or not, publishers typically ensured his claims were legally reviewed before print. That's part of his brand, airtight sourcing. For his book Revenge, Bower reportedly conducted more than 80 interviews with individuals who had professional connections to Meghan, from palace staff to industry insiders. Supporters say he builds narratives the way a lawyer builds a case, documents first, commentary second. So when he references a prenup clause, he implies it's based on conversations with legal professionals familiar with royal contracts. That doesn't automatically confirm the details, but it does raise eyebrows. Here's where it gets layered. Most prenuptial agreements are pretty basic. They outline assets brought into the marriage. They define how shared property is handled if things fall apart. Some include timelines for spousal support or financial protections. Straightforward stuff. Royal agreements, however, operate on a different level. They're designed not just to protect personal wealth, but also institutional assets tied to the crown, properties held in trust, title usage, public conduct expectations, media engagement boundaries. These aren't casual bullet points, they're carefully drafted safeguards. For example, during the separation of Charles III and Diana Spencer, detailed provisions governed how titles would be used post-split. Royal contracts often anticipate outcomes years in advance. If Bower's suggestion about Clause 7 is accurate, it may involve financial triggers tied to public branding, outside earnings, or duration of marriage. That could potentially explain strategic PR decisions and business structuring in recent years.
And what would Diana think of Harry attacking William in that way? She'd be appalled by her son's behavior. And that was, again, so nauseating, the way he kept on bringing in Diana, who appealed to the media all the time, who phoned journalists secretly, who brought Martin Bashir into her office, who cooperated with Andrew Morton, who kept on calling Richard Kay. I mean, this is ridiculous. Aggressive PR for the Sussexes got way beyond herself because she really doesn't understand the British royal family or Britain, but understands how to project her clients. And so I think she got it wrong by leaking it or even letting anyone know about it.
Again, this is interpretation, not confirmation. Still, the timing raises questions. Rehiring a crisis-savvy firm like Sunshine Sachs isn't random. Firms like that specialize in reputation management during sensitive transitions, especially high-profile separations. Whether this is preparation, precaution, or simply smart business planning is up for debate, but one thing is clear. If a single clause really does carry the weight Bauer implies, it could reshape how people view the balance of power inside this marriage. And that possibility alone is why the conversation isn't fading anytime soon. When Harry and Meghan relocated to California, their financial world shifted overnight, and not just because of new contracts. California operates under community property law, which basically means anything earned during a marriage is shared equally. That would include major entertainment agreements like their partnership with Netflix, the podcast deal with Spotify, and potentially even income connected to projects launched after their wedding. According to Tom Bauer, this is where things get layered. He claims the prenup didn't just say split everything down the middle. Instead, he suggests there's detailed wording about intellectual property, meaning ownership of stories, production rights, branding control, and the commercial identity of the Sussex name itself.
And of course, the news today that Harry's memoir is going to be published in the near future will just alarm the royal family here in England about what he's actually going to say to earn his money.
Last week, we brought to you fresh news that Harry had been staying at the San Vicente bungalows to take a break from his family, despite owning a sprawling Montecito property together with Guesthouse. And this week, those rumours are intensifying.
That would cover joint ventures, media projects, and even Harry's memoir, Spare. Now, here's the key point Bauer raises: control versus income. He suggests the language in the agreement may not simply divide profits, but define who holds operational authority. Meghan is reportedly listed as business manager across several ventures. She was deeply involved in negotiating deals. Under California's legal structure, combined with whatever wording exists in that contract, Bauer believes she may hold stronger positioning over the revenue streams tied to their shared brand. Important to say, these are claims based on sources Bauer references, not publicly confirmed documents. But if accurate, it paints a very strategic picture. What makes this even more dramatic is Bauer's suggestion that the most significant clause wasn't part of the original 2018 agreement. He claims it was added later through an amendment or handbrynn, and that Harry signed it trusting the process, possibly without diving into every line. Again, that's an allegation, not proven fact, but it's the part that has people talking. Prenup amendments are not unusual. Couples revise agreements after big life shifts. Children, property purchases, launching companies. In this case, 2020 was a massive transition year.
Herself.
And Meghan herself.
In the months before she met Harry, was setting up paparazzi pictures in London. She now acts as if the paparazzi are literally the devil incarnate.
She begged the paparazzi to photograph her and they wouldn't. And when they did, she says, "Oh, I don't want to, I'm hurt." And that ridiculous story about how they first met, the whole thing was a tissue of inaccuracies, to be polite.
Because what do you make of that? Because as you know, Harry was always very insistent.
So many surprises, by the way, tucked away in your book. Everybody is already buzzing because you reveal that Simon is not a fan of Jennifer Lopez. I was not aware of this. You say he can't stand her. So set the record straight for us, Tom. What's his beef with J-Lo?
Well, he just found her just too vain and too self-interested, which seems like he met his own match. But in the end, Simon doesn't really like many celebrities. I noticed when I went with him to the Oprah Winfrey Show and many other places around Hollywood and elsewhere, he's a rather shy guy. He's always afraid of being associated with people who are bigger than him or who might put him in the shade. But in the end, he's pretty critical of people. He doesn't like Elton John. He doesn't like many of the people who are really famous in the music business. You know, he's critical.
Harry and Meghan stepped away from royal duties, moved to the United States, and began building an independent business structure. Updating financial agreements during that time would make logical sense. Bauer says the amendment happened right in the middle of that shift. He also references Meghan's previous divorce from Trevor Engelson, suggesting she approached legal negotiations with extreme attention to detail. Lawyers who were reportedly familiar with that earlier case described her as thorough and focused on protecting long-term earning potential. If that characterization is accurate, it would explain why financial safeguards would be front and center in any later agreement. By late 2020, the couple's business machine was accelerating. The Netflix partnership was announced in September. The Spotify agreement followed. Their foundation, Archewell, was established around the same time, operating both as a charitable entity and a brand platform. Structuring ownership during that window would have been critical. California law already ensures a 50-50 split of marital earnings. But Bauer claims the amendment went further, potentially addressing brand ownership and decision-making power. He points out that Meghan's name appears prominently in business filings and suggests she negotiated terms that could give her majority control over the Sussex commercial brand in the event of a separation. That distinction matters. Splitting profits is one thing. Controlling the brand, the name, the licensing, the future projects, that's another level entirely. None of this confirms an impending split. It doesn't prove imbalance. It simply highlights how complex high-profile marriages become when global branding, media deals, and legal frameworks collide. If Bauer's interpretation holds weight, the conversation isn't about who earns more, it's about who holds the keys to the machine they built together. And that's a very different kind of power. According to Tom Bauer, conversations with Meghan's former legal team from her first divorce reveal something that goes way back to 2013. He says the lawyers described her negotiating style as focused, calculated, and always thinking 3 steps ahead. Their takeaway? She wanted independence above all else. When Meghan separated from Trevor Engelson, the goal, according to Bauer's sources, was simple: a clean break. No shared properties that would force ongoing contact. No complicated financial ties, no blurred lines, just a full reset where her career stayed intact and her finances stayed protected. That approach, if accurate, shows a clear pattern. Protect your position and move smart. Bauer also points to 2017, the year Meghan reportedly first hired Sunshine Sachs, right around the time her relationship with Harry became public. Sunshine Sachs isn't just any PR agency. They've built a name handling sensitive celebrity transitions and high-profile separations. One example often mentioned is their work with Katie Holmes during her split from Tom Cruise. That kind of resume matters in Hollywood.
But I do think the Sussex Overdrive is unbelievable. But I mean, I don't think that he is going to get back in. I mean, I think that there are 2 reasons. One is I think that William wouldn't allow it. And secondly, the moment he got back to America, he immediately promoted Disney and his trip to Disney World, which showed that he is very commercially minded, which we'll get into later on, which makes it impossible for him. And of course, Meghan wouldn't come back to Britain.
As the fairy tale Prince Harry and Meghan Markle embarked on in 2016 become an absolute nightmare for them. Despite marrying in St. George's Chapel in Windsor, it seems like life hasn't been so rosy for the couple. They have gone through endless challenges, the vast majority of which are all self-inflicted. And this weekend, we had some new news that seems to kind of reiterate the idea that Meghan Markle, she wants to go back to the past. She wants to relive her glory days because she has hired Sunshine Sachs as her new PR representatives, who were representing her back in 2016. And at the same time, Harry is in the UK fighting for a court case that really has no bearing on any of this, but we have heard endlessly that he wants to reestablish himself.
Then came 2020. Harry and Meghan parted ways with Sunshine Sachs. The public explanation pointed to budget adjustments, but Bauer claims insiders suggested something else, that Meghan preferred tighter in-house narrative control through Archewell Communications. Again, that's his sourcing, not a confirmed internal memo. Still, it adds a layer to the timeline. Fast forward to January 2026, and Sunshine Sachs is reportedly back in the picture. Bauer argues that in high-profile splits, PR specialists are often brought in months before any official filing. The idea, he suggests, is to stabilize public perception early. That doesn't confirm anything is happening. But strategically, it's the kind of move that fuels speculation fast. What really grabs attention, though, isn't just the PR shuffle. It's the financial structuring since 2022. Meghan began developing her lifestyle venture, American Riviera Orchard, as a separate entity under her name. Trademark filings reportedly didn't include Harry. She was seen attending business meetings solo in Los Angeles. On its own, that's normal entrepreneurial behavior. But when viewed through Bauer's lens, he sees a familiar blueprint: establish independent income, separate identity, clean structure. Now let's talk numbers. When the partnership with Netflix was announced, headlines threw around the $100 million figure. That sounded huge. But industry insiders often explain those deals differently. They're usually structured as performance-based maximums, meaning full payout depends on delivering all contracted content.
And so he became hypersensitive and blamed the media for the crashes of his relationships, never thinking that they could have something to do with himself. So he's a very complicated, depressed, unintelligent man who is seeking a role and has got really nobody on whom he could rely, which is in the end where Meghan stepped in. I mean, a needy man met a woman who could help him with his needs.
The documentary series was released. Other concepts like the animated Project Pearl were scrapped. The overall agreement reportedly shifted into a first-look arrangement rather than a full production pipeline. Bauer claims sources told him the actual amount received may have been closer to $40 million. That figure hasn't been publicly confirmed, but it changes the optics dramatically if accurate. Here's where his timeline sharpens. Around 2022, when certain entertainment projects stalled, trademark applications for American Riviera Orchard began appearing. That timing stands out. If one revenue stream slows down, building another makes business sense. It doesn't automatically signal trouble. It could simply be diversification, but Bauer frames it as strategic positioning. The bigger theme he keeps pointing to is control. Brand control, income control, narrative control. Whether that interpretation holds up or not remains to be seen. What's undeniable is that the sequence of PR decisions, business filings, and contract adjustments creates a story that's far more layered than a simple Hollywood romance. And if Bauer is even partially right about the pattern he sees, then what looked random might actually be methodical planning unfolding step by step. The latest layer in Tom Bauer's timeline focuses on what he describes as a shift from joint branding to individual positioning. And he argues it started quietly in 2022. According to Bauer, Meghan didn't just launch new projects. She reportedly brought in legal teams to structure business entities separate from Archewell. On paper, that can look like smart entrepreneurship, but Bauer frames it as something more strategic, a long-term asset protection play. There were reports circulating about significant financial strain, including figures like $38 million in obligations tied to production costs and property expenses. Bauer disputes the idea that this reflects reckless spending. Instead, he suggests it may represent financial restructuring, moving liabilities and assets into positions that protect long-term control. That's a serious interpretation, and again, it's based on his sourcing. Take the Montecito property. The home, located in California, is reportedly titled in a way that aligns with the state's homestead protections.
Apparently, Prince Harry is already talking to divorce lawyers?
So this is kind of interesting. This is the woman that the papers are citing for this reporting is a longtime royal insider, a socialite. She's been right. I've been following her because she's great TV. She's been right about a lot. And she's claiming she's heard from several sources now that he's hired a lawyer, and it happens to be somebody who's a great divorce lawyer and specializes in divorce. And it dovetails on other reports that he is spending a lot of his time in two hotels, one of which is in Montecito, another of which is not too far away, as an escape from her. It's entirely plausible. All they've done for 5 years is complain and moan and see themselves as downtrodden victims. That doesn't tend to spur a lot of feelings of love and happiness and close bonding. I mean, I guess in the crisis mode, it might.
California homestead law is designed to shield primary residences under certain legal conditions. On its own, that's normal estate planning for high net worth individuals. But Bauer claims financial advisors familiar with divorce preparation strategies told him the structure mirrors textbook asset protection models. He also points to branding decisions. The American Riviera Orchard trademark was filed solely under Meghan's name. Her podcast partnership with Lemonada Media lists her individually. Even her children's book, The Bench, was positioned as a solo creative effort. None of that automatically signals separation. Creatives often pursue independent projects. But Bauer says the pattern matters. In his view, 2022 marked a pivot. Fewer joint appearances unless required. More solo ventures, more independent branding. He believes that's when what he calls an exit strategy quietly began to unfold. Now here's where his claims become even more specific. Bauer predicts that if a separation were to happen, it would follow California's legal framework closely. The state requires 6 months of residency before filing for divorce, a requirement Meghan has long satisfied as a California resident. That doesn't confirm anything imminent, but it establishes eligibility. He argues that once papers are filed, if they ever are, certain mechanisms activate immediately. Title usage limitations could apply depending on negotiated terms. Asset division proceedings would begin, and most critically, any intellectual property clause in a prenuptial amendment would determine control over the Sussex brand moving forward. Bauer suggests Harry could risk losing majority influence over shared ventures. The Montecito house might need to be sold depending on division terms. Control over Archewell operations could shift depending on corporate filings. These are projections, not rulings, but they are central to Bauer's analysis. He also speculates about custody dynamics, noting that California courts generally prioritize stability for children. If one parent is seen as the primary day-to-day caregiver, that can weigh into decisions. That's not a judgment, it's how family courts often operate. Still, every custody case is unique, and outcomes depend on evidence, not assumptions.
At that moment last year, she was about to promote her Netflix series and didn't want to, firstly, be seen with Harry, and secondly, didn't want to go somewhere where she'd appear cheap and give it gratis. And this year, she is desperate to be seen.
Yeah.
And that's why she turned up. So I think she has a major problem, financially and professionally. And I think that Harry has a problem because he's lost his charity centre Bailey in Africa. He better up, and all these commercial deals are declining. I think that his reputation is somewhat toxic. And I think Invictus is his only lifeline. And there'll be problems with that too.
I mean, we've seen people leaving Invictus recently. Important, I think that's you mentioned the Disney special. Does the Disney special at all?
Another element Bauer highlights is future storytelling rights. He claims the Prenup amendment may contain language limiting how royal narratives can be monetized independently. If true, that could restrict certain publishing or media opportunities down the line. Again, that detail hasn't been publicly verified. Then there's Harry's recent courtroom appearance in London, where he was visibly emotional during proceedings related to security and media issues. Some observers saw frustration, others saw exhaustion. Bauer interprets the moment as someone under intense pressure, possibly sensing deeper shifts happening behind the scenes. But here's the key thing. Interpretation isn't confirmation. Public behavior in court can reflect many things: stress, personal conviction, or simply the weight of ongoing legal battles. Whether Harry fully understands the financial architecture around him is something only he would know. What Bauer presents is a theory built on timing, filings, and legal structure. It's layered, it's dramatic, and if even part of it proves accurate, it could reshape how people view the balance inside one of the most watched marriages in the world. For now, though, it remains a high-stakes analysis, not a finalized outcome. As we wrap this up, here's where Tom Bauer leaves the story. And it's a heavy conclusion. Bauer argues that Harry's recent public behavior doesn't look like someone who feels secure and steady in his marriage. He interprets the tension, the visible emotion in court, and the frustration during legal battles as signs that something deeper might be off balance. That's his reading of the situation, not confirmed fact. But it's the lens he's using. According to sources he references, Harry has felt increasingly isolated over the past few years. Bauer claims members of his legal circle warned him about the financial exposure tied to ongoing court cases. Lawsuits are expensive, appeals are expensive, international legal fights even more so. Yet Bauer suggests Meghan supported continuing those battles. Now here's the question he raises, and it's one that sparks debate. If financial pressure was building, why continue pushing forward? Bauer's theory is that if certain liabilities are structured individually, they may not fully transfer in the event of a separation. That's a serious claim, and it depends entirely on how assets and debts are legally categorized. None of those private details are public. Still, it's the angle he presents. His final assessment centers back on that alleged prenup amendment. Page 14, Clause 7. Bauer believes that when Harry signed the updated agreement in 2020, during the major transition to California and the launch of large-scale media ventures, he may not have realized how powerful the language was. If Bauer's interpretation is right, the clause didn't just protect shared interests, it clearly defined control. And control is everything. Bauer suggests that once divorce paperwork is officially filed, if that day ever comes, the machinery activates immediately. Brand ownership decisions would follow the contract. Asset division would follow state law. Business authority would follow corporate filings. He believes Harry could lose majority influence over shared ventures, while Meghan could retain stronger positioning over the Sussex commercial identity. That doesn't mean it will happen. It doesn't mean filings are imminent. It simply means that in Bauer's view, the structure favors preparedness. He goes even further, saying the 2020 amendment may not have been about strengthening a marriage, but about preparing for every possible outcome. That's a bold conclusion. And like everything in this story, it's built on sourced conversations and interpretation, not released court documents. So now the real question lands with you. Is Meghan strategically planning her independence the way any high-profile entrepreneur would, or is Tom Bauer connecting dots that don't actually form the picture he's describing? Are these just smart business moves being reframed as something dramatic? Or is there a legal blueprint quietly unfolding behind the scenes? This story isn't black and white, it's contracts, timing, branding, state law, and public perception all colliding at once. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear where you stand on this. If you found this breakdown interesting, make sure to like the video, share it with someone who follows royal drama, and subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Turn on notifications, because if anything official gets filed, you already know we're covering it. And before you click away, check out the next video popping up on your screen right now for even more celebrity drama and behind-the-scenes analysis. Trust me, this conversation is far from over. I'll see you in the next one.